You wake up and something feels wrong. Not in a loud, obvious way, but in a quiet, heavy way. You look around your room, scroll through your phone, maybe get ready for the day, but everything feels empty. The things that once made you happy, music, friends, hobbies, they feel dull now, like you're watching your life from the outside. You're going through the motions, but there's no spark inside you. At first, you might think you're just tired. Maybe it's stress or burnout or just a bad mood. But deep down, you know it's more than that. It's not that life is boring, it's that something inside you is slowly shutting down, and that's the part that scares you the most. Because when joy disappears, you start to wonder if it's ever coming back. Carl Jung, one of the most important thinkers in psychology, understood this feeling. He called it the beginning of transformation. To him, this wasn't depression in the medical sense. It was a sign, a message from your unconscious mind that something deeper was happening. Jung believed that when your old identity no longer fits, your psyche starts to break it down. Not to destroy you, but to rebuild you into someone more real. This moment when nothing feels fun anymore isn't just sadness. It's the start of what Jung called the dark night of the soul. It's a phase where the false parts of you begin to fall apart. The parts of you that were built to impress others. The roles you took on to feel accepted. The habits you formed to survive. All of that starts to crack. And in those cracks, the truth begins to show. You start asking questions you never dared to ask before. Who am I really? Why do I feel so empty even when I have everything I thought I wanted? What if this life I built isn't actually mine? These aren't easy questions. That's why most people avoid them. They keep distracting themselves. They scroll, drink, overwork, joke around, anything to avoid sitting with that feeling. Because deep down they fear what they might find. But this is where your second life begins. When you stop running from the emptiness and start listening to it. When you realize that your sadness is not weakness, it's a signal, a call from your real self, buried under years of noise and pretending. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." That's what makes this phase so painful. You are starting to feel the weight of who you are and who you are not. It's not fun, it's not easy, but it's real. And real is the first step to healing. The truth is, your soul is trying to wake you up. The emptiness is not your enemy. It's your invitation, an invitation to go deeper, to face the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, and to start living a life that actually feels like yours. This is not the end. It's the beginning of your real life. If you ignore this feeling, if you push it down and keep pretending everything is fine, you don't just lose your joy, you begin to lose yourself. Every time you tell yourself, it's just a phase, or I'll feel better soon, without truly listening, you move one step further from your real life. The more you avoid it, the heavier it becomes. You find yourself stuck in a cycle, waking up tired, pretending to smile, laughing at things that don't feel funny, filling your day with noise so you don't have to hear the quiet sadness underneath. This is where the stakes become painfully real. Because if you don't stop and face what's happening inside you, that quiet sadness doesn't go away. It grows. It spreads. You start to feel disconnected from the people you love. Your work becomes meaningless. Even moments that should feel happy seem flat and far away. You begin to wonder if something is broken inside you. But nothing is broken. What's happening is that your soul is tired of pretending. You've spent so long becoming who others wanted you to be, that now, when your real self tries to speak, you barely recognize the voice. Carl Jung believed that when you ignore your inner truth for too long, your psyche will find a way to force you to see it. That could be through a crisis, a loss, a sudden breakdown, or just a deep, empty feeling that refuses to go away. He called it the shadow, the part of you that holds everything you've pushed aside, your pain, your anger, your dreams, your truth. When that shadow is ignored, it doesn't disappear. It shows up in your life in ways you can't control, through anxiety, numbness, regret, and a feeling that you're not really alive. That's why this moment matters, because you're standing at a fork in the road. One path leads back into the numb routine, more pretending, more surviving, more slow decay of the soul. The other path is harder. It means facing the truth even when it hurts. It means letting go of the mask you've worn for so long, even if it means walking into the unknown. But that second path is the only one that leads to real life. If you keep ignoring the call to change, you don't just stay the same. You slowly become a stranger to yourself. And one day you'll look back and realize you traded your real life for comfort. You stayed quiet when your soul was screaming. You avoided risk and ended up with regret. Jung warned us about this. He said that the most dangerous thing is to live a life that is not your own, because that kind of life doesn't just waste your time. It slowly destroys your spirit. So ask yourself, what are you really risking by facing the truth? Pain? Yes. Discomfort? Absolutely. But if you don't take that risk, the price is far greater. You'll never feel truly alive. You'll wake up one day surrounded by everything you thought you wanted, and still feel like something is missing. Because what's missing is you, the real you. And that's the real danger. Not failure, not rejection, but a life lived half asleep. A life where joy fades, purpose is forgotten, and your true self is buried under years of silence. That is what's at stake. And only you can decide if it's worth facing the darkness to finally step into the light. You didn't always feel this way. There was a time when simple things brought you real joy. When you laughed without thinking about how you looked. When you were curious, excited, and present. So what happened? Why does everything feel so dull now? The answer begins with something Jung called the persona, the mask you wear for the world. As children, we express ourselves freely, but as we grow up, we start to adjust. We notice which parts of us are accepted and which are not. We learn to hide certain feelings, to act a certain way, to meet expectations. Over time, we build a version of ourselves designed to fit in, to be liked, to survive. That version becomes the you that others know, but it's not the real you. This is where the disconnection begins. Because while the world might like your mask, your polite smile, your achievements, your calm voice, your soul knows it's not the full truth. You've spent so long performing, you start to forget who you really are underneath. The persona becomes heavy. It starts to crack. And when it does, joy disappears. Not because you're lazy or broken, but because your soul is tired of pretending. Jung said that problems arise when people confuse the persona with their true identity. That's when burnout shows up. Not just physical exhaustion, but emotional emptiness. You can't feel alive when you're living as someone else. This is why things don't feel fun anymore. Because you're not truly there. You're stuck in a role that doesn't fit you anymore. Maybe you've succeeded in life, done everything right, and yet something still feels wrong. That's not failure. It's a signal. A message from your unconscious that the version of yourself you've built is no longer enough. And this is where the real work begins. You have to start peeling back the mask. You have to look at the choices you've made. Were they really yours? Or were they made to please someone else? You have to ask what parts of you have been buried just to keep the peace. The things you once loved, the dreams you quietly gave up, the emotions you were told were too much. They're still there, waiting for you. This isn't about blaming anyone. It's about understanding that the world often rewards us for being what it wants, not what we are. And eventually that gap between the outer self and the inner truth becomes too wide. That's when joy fades. Because you're not living your life, you're just maintaining an image. To feel alive again, you don't need to chase more excitement. You need to come home to yourself. You need to strip away the roles, the masks, the performances. And that takes courage. Because the persona feels safe. It's predictable. People like it. But underneath that safety is a deeper kind of freedom. The kind of freedom where your joy is real, because you are real. The numbness you feel is not a flaw. It's the beginning of your real self trying to break through. It's the sign that the mask is cracking, and behind it is someone worth meeting. Someone honest, someone whole, someone who is finally ready to live their own life, not the one they were trained to perform. What you're going through isn't just sadness or burnout. It's the beginning of something much deeper, what Carl Jung called the dark night of the soul. It sounds dramatic, but it's not some mystical idea. It's a psychological truth. It's the moment when your old identity starts to fall apart and your real self begins to wake up. You might feel lost, disconnected, even scared. That's because the things you used to believe in, the roles you played, the dreams you chased, the people you tried to please, no longer feel solid. The ground beneath you is shifting. And in this space between who you were and who you're becoming, there's darkness. It's confusing. It's painful. But it's necessary. Jung believed that this kind of inner collapse isn't a sign of failure. It's a natural part of transformation. It's like the forest at night. Everything looks unfamiliar. You can't see the path ahead. You feel alone. But this is where the real journey begins. Because only in the dark do you start to hear your own voice again. The one you've ignored for years. You're not broken. You're breaking open. That's a big difference. We live in a world that tells us to stay busy, stay happy, stay productive. So when we feel numb or empty, we assume something is wrong with us. But what if nothing's wrong? What if this emptiness is actually a message? A wake-up call that the life you were living wasn't truly yours? This is what Jung meant when he said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. You are shedding old layers, beliefs, habits, relationships, identities that no longer serve you." And that hurts. It's the grief of letting go, but it's also the birth of something new. This is the moment where many people give up. They distract themselves. They go back to pretending. But if you can stay with the discomfort, if you can walk through the dark night instead of running from it, something incredible happens. You begin to meet the parts of yourself you forgot, the parts you abandoned to be accepted, the parts that still carry wonder, fire, and truth. And slowly, the numbness starts to lift. This isn't a quick fix. There's no exact timeline. Some days you'll feel strong, other days you'll want to quit. But each time you choose honesty over hiding, each time you sit with your pain instead of pushing it away, you move one step closer to your real self. Remember, the dark night doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to reveal you, to strip away the noise so you can finally hear your soul speak. It doesn't offer comfort, but it does offer truth. And truth, even when it's hard, is the only thing that will ever make you feel truly alive again. So, if you feel lost right now, if nothing feels fun anymore, don't panic. You're not alone, you're not weak, you're being called to face yourself, to wake up, to begin again, not as the person you were expected to be, but as the person you were always meant to become. Now comes the part most people never talk about, the choice. You've made it through the breakdown. You've seen the cracks in the way mask. You've felt the silence that comes when the old life stops working. But now you're standing at a crossroads. One path is familiar. It leads back to comfort, performance, pretending. You know exactly how that life works. You know how to smile through it, how to keep busy, how to make people think you're okay. But the other path? That's the path into the unknown, into freedom, into your second life, the one where you stop surviving and start living. Carl Jung believed that the people who come out of the dark night don't come out unchanged. They come out reborn, but not reborn as someone new, reborn as someone true, someone who has met their pain, looked it in the eye, and said, "I'm still here." That's not weakness, that's power. From this place you begin to live differently. You stop saying yes to things that shrink you. You stop chasing praise from people who don't even know who you are. You stop apologizing for being sensitive or deep or different. You start doing the things that feel real. You start honoring your instincts, your emotions, your voice. And yes, it's going to cost you. You may lose relationships. You may feel misunderstood. You might be rejected by the very people you once tried so hard to impress. But what you gain is worth everything you lose. You gain yourself. You begin to enjoy the silence again. Not because you're avoiding anything, but because you've made peace with who you are. You begin to smile, not to perform, but because something inside you finally feels alive. You start to notice the world again, the sky, the sounds, the small things, the beauty you used to overlook when you were trapped in survival mode. And slowly you remember what joy feels like, not the fake joy of distraction, but the real kind, the kind that rises from within when your life finally matches your soul. This is the reward of the dark night. You wake up, not to a perfect life, but to a real one. One where you don't need to be anyone else. One where fun returns, not because life got easier, but because you got honest. You stopped pretending, you stopped running, you chose to live, and that changes everything. You won't get a clear sign when your second life begins. There won't be a loud voice or a sudden moment of clarity. It begins quietly, right here in this moment. When you finally stop pretending, when you stop chasing the life others planned for you, and start listening to the voice that's been whispering beneath the noise all along. The truth is, you were never lost. You were just buried. under expectations, distractions, pressure, and fear. But now you know. You know that the emptiness you've been feeling isn't your end. It's your beginning. A sign that your old self is done pretending, done performing, done playing small. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That's your task now. Not to be perfect, or impressive, or accepted, but to be real. Yes, it will hurt. Yes, it will be hard. But the pain of becoming yourself is nothing compared to the pain of dying without ever having lived. So ask yourself, if today was the only day you were guaranteed, would you still waste it pretending you're okay? You don't need more time. You don't need permission, you need to decide. Because your second life isn't waiting for better circumstances, it's waiting for you. And it begins the moment you stop running and start choosing. Not tomorrow, not someday, today. If something in you woke up while listening to this, write it down below. I'm ready to live my second life.